Welcome to another episode of Southern Arizona's Nonprofits, the superheroes impacting our community. We're broadcasting live today on the Tucson Business Channel, a division of Mark Bishop Media from the Stewart Title corporate offices on Broadway in Tucson, Arizona. Our show is brought to you by SCIP, SSCIP, the Social Service Contractor Indemnity Pool, ensuring nonprofits like ours for more than 3.5 decades. I'm Barbara McClure, Executive Director of Impact of Southern Arizona, host of the show, and with me today are two nonprofit leaders who will have you looking up into the sky day and night. Is it a plane? Is it a bird? These two superheroes are teaching our community about birds, our natural surroundings, and outer space. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Tony Figueroa, who's the Invasive Plant Program Manager at Tucson Audubon Society.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming, Tony. And also with me are Carlos Aragon. He's the CEO and co-founder of a nonprofit called Reach for the Stars.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you both. This is going to be very fun. And I think the audience will think, well, what do stars and Audubon have in common? And I think by the end of the hour, they'll be very surprised. So I'll start with you, Tony, because I was going to ask you, the Audubon Society has, of course, been around a long time, and I know Reach for the Stars is newer, but your plant program is new. So can you tell us a little bit of kind of a background about the Audubon Society in general here in Tucson, and then tell us what your program's about?
Yeah, the Tucson Audubon has been around for since 1949, and most of the activities that we've been focused on is just inspiring people to get outdoors, look at birds, appreciate them, and understand why this area is so special. Southeastern Arizona is a globally renowned area for birding, and people make lifetime trips to come to this area. So we're really fortunate to live here. And like many places in the country and in the world, invasive species have been spreading as a result of human activity and the desire to have cattle in places where cattle shouldn't be, such as the desert. And after a lot of human activities and impacts, we're kind of at this crossroads in the Sonoran Desert where we've brought a lot of invasive species from Africa, and it's slowly transitioning into what I refer to as the Sonoran Getty, where you have a lot of grasses that are filling in the empty spaces of the desert, and they're creating fire threats that never existed before. The desert does not burn naturally because the vegetation density is so low. If a lightning strike hits a tree, maybe it burns that tree and 20 feet around it, but then it eventually hits dirt and the fire stops. Now, when we have these grasses that have invaded and filled in all of these spaces, when that fire happens, it continues to burn for acres and acres. And that's burning down saguaros, that's burning down palo verdes. And saguaros, they take such a long time to grow up, and they are essential for 15 bird species in our area that depend on them for their life cycle, either for nesting, for food, you name it. Then there's 100 insects or animals that depend on the saguaro.
That's interesting. I'm surprised, so many.
Yeah, they can't survive fire. So if fire comes through from something like buffalo grass and burns down a 130-year-old saguaro, it's going to take a very long time for a new saguaro to return to that spot, because the first thing that's likely to return to that area is more of the unwanted grasses. And you need to have a nurse tree like a palo verde there that's grown up to a size. They can have birds land on it, have them poop out some seeds from a saguaro, and then eventually establish in a good rainy year.
Right.
I mean, you can go out onto the landscape and it's the saguaros from 1983 to 1984 that are just a little bit older than me, and they're all about waist height. So if you go walking through the desert, you can see the last big recruitment that the desert had was almost 40 years ago.
And can I just share something I learned about saguaros? Because I am not a Tucson native. I moved here about 15 years ago. But my husband and I did a tour with the Desert Museum out into the saguaros. And I was surprised to find, and I loved your comment that when you go out, all the cactus are kind of the same height, that perfect season for saguaros to germinate and start fresh and survive, takes multiple winters of a certain degree. And so it only happens like every 40 years or every some long span. And after learning that, I was surprised that now when I look out into the desert, I see it very differently because you're right. There will be a lot of cactus that are 2 feet tall, and then there's a whole group of cactus that are 6 feet tall, and there are not many in between that height. And then the big giants. And so it's kind of shocking. But once you know that, I think it makes looking out into the desert really unique.
Yeah. So that's one of the things that we saw as a birding organization. These iconic plants that our bird species depend on are under attack from grasses. And if we don't do something, we're going to continue to lose saguaros, and that means we're going to continue to lose the birds that depend on them. That just was not acceptable for us as an organization. So we saw the need regionally to step up and take action, working with federal partners and then eventually with some local government and HOAs. But you got to start somewhere. And you could just sit there and just see it happen and say, man, somebody should do something about it. Or you can take the stand and get out there and start doing the work and start inspiring others to take that action around them and throughout the region. And we're now just over 3 years of doing invasive plant work, and it's really inspiring to see some of the areas that we've treated that were just so daunting, 20 plus acre sites, 60 acre sites, and seeing all of the native vegetation that's being buried by them and having this daunting task, going out, doing the work, and then coming back half a year later. Seeing them starting to decay on the landscape and seeing the new vegetation starting to emerge. Then you get some more rains. There's going to be some seedlings that pop up in there, and then we go and we'll spot spray and do some work to make sure that that just doesn't get reinfested. You can't just say it's a one and done treatment. You need to return to it to make sure your work holds. But now, having done it for several years, it's just incredible the change that you see at some of these areas and the native vegetation coming back. Plants that were completely being choked out by buffalo grass. I sprayed all of the buffalo grasses around it. It killed the buffalo grass. The native bush or shrub is still surviving. So that's one of the challenges that people are always like, well, if you're killing the grass, is it going to kill the saguaros also? And it's like, no, it's not. It's not the same chemistry. They're not the same body types. One has very thick skin and is resistant to penetration. The other is a grass blade. So different chemistry, but it gets the job done, and it's amazing to see the change.
What an incredible undertaking. Like, what a tremendous amount of work that you have to do to help this area and its ecosystem thrive and survive. Good for you for bringing awareness and attention to that. That's incredible.
I appreciate it. And I mean, shout out to my crews. I have 20 full-time employees that are working through this summer, through the hottest summer on record. I mean, it was 110 degree days often, and we're up on a hillside up in the Tucson mountains. There's not any tree cover. The ground is hot. It's not easy work. And we're out there doing it because if nobody else is going to do it, the problem is just going to persist and keep spreading. So thank you.
Yeah, that's great that the Audubon Society had that foresight to venture out and do something. Is buffalo grass the most invasive species here? I mean, it seems to be a number one problem. I hear about buffalo grass a lot.
It's one of the most invasive species in the region. it's also recognized for the threat that it poses to our ecosystem and also our communities. So it kind of unfortunately hits all of that happy crossroad interface of this is bad for nature and this is bad for society. If we have fire that burns through a saguaro forest, that sucks for the Sonoran Desert. That sucks for all the people that want to go out and enjoy the desert. It really has a bad impact on the birds or the animals that depend on it. They've lost their apartment complex or their hotel if it gets burnt up.
Sure.
And you need to fly somewhere else. Hopefully you're going to find a home somewhere else, but if you don't, that's how you lose species. That's how eventually they go extinct. If you're not preserving that critical habitat, you're going to lose species. We're not going to be able to stop bufflegrass everywhere, but we can protect a lot of really valuable area. Our riparian corridors, the washes that come out of our mountains, focusing on these areas that 90% of our animals use and depend on, that's what's going to keep our wildlife around.
That's exciting. I think that's such a neat thing to do. I agree with you, Carlos. It's a wonderful project. I know at Impact, we have a lot of clients who are having the insurance companies are taking away fire coverage, especially in rural communities where there's a lot of grassland, or you're living on an acre and you can clear around your house, but you've got grass all over the place. So it's
how scary.
It's a big deal now. Yeah, I think people are working on what are we going to do, because you've been hearing these insurance companies pulling out of entire states, and Arizona, it's starting to happen. Just last month, we've been getting a lot of calls about people who are being dropped for fire insurance.
Oh, no.
Right, and you can't do that, and you can't do that in the state. I mean, the state cannot be without insurance. So,
well, that's one of the things, like the Maui fire, a lot of that was bufflegrass.
Oh, interesting.
So if it can happen in a tropical paradise and you have that flame coming down the mountainside, the foothills of Tucson is a very similar situation.
Sure.
And we had some extreme winds this year that if there was a fire in one of those foothills areas prior to that, it could have pushed those flames in who knows what direction. But that risk is right here in the desert. It's not some other area. It's not a California problem of wildfires. It is in the desert. And when bufflegrass burns, it burns at 1,300 degrees Fahrenheit.
Wow.
Which is approaching molten lava or the kiln that a glass blower uses. So these are incredibly hot heats. And the flame length can be 2 stories high.
From the little bufflegrass? I mean, it's
little bufflegrass. I've had bufflegrass that's waist high, chest high.
But I think 2-story building from something that short. I mean, a 2-story flame, that seems kind of incredible.
It's because of how dense and fine fuel all of the leaf blades are in it. So instead of a branch on a tree that might take some time to ignite, slowly that whole clump of bufflegrass is igniting at once with all of its neighbors.
Oh, gosh.
And
Incredible.
It just burns in a fury.
What a picture I have in my head.
Yeah.
It's kind of scary.
The Mercer fire is one of the best documented fires. It was near Bear Canyon, and it was 25 acres from a lightning strike in 2019 that hit a patch of bufflegrass, burned the whole 25 acres, killed many, many saguaros and native trees. And the first thing to come back was just happy bufflegrass.
Oh, gosh.
Because that is how bufflegrass has evolved. And a lot of the Serengeti species have evolved with extreme fire pressure, where lightning strikes, burns it out, and it clears the biomass from the top, and it's able to just grow as happy as can be. And then you have zebras and gazelles that come and munch it all down to the ground, and it just comes right back. So
Great food source in the Serengeti, but
not a palatable food source
not here.
in the Sonoran Desert. Though.
Can we bring zebras or gazelles here? I would like to see that.
That would create all sorts of other problems.
Okay.
They really like the flat ground of the Serengeti. They wouldn't be climbing up into the foothills of the Tucson Mountains or the Catalinas, unfortunately.
Well, and it's such a good point that you make, because we did see in those fires that just rushes down a mountain. I mean, we're all living at the foothills of mountains in Tucson because we're in such an amphitheater of mountains. So what can people do in their homes? I mean, we have a lot of people who live even in town, not just in rural communities. Even our yard backs up to a natural swath of land. And so what can you do in your own neighborhood to help get rid of bufflegrass? Or what are some techniques? I mean, we're going to try to pull it out by the root, or like you said, spray it?
If you are going to be removing it, if you don't want to use chemical for treatment, you do have to remove it and get the root out completely. It's not something that you can mow to effectively treat. If you mow it, just like a zebra coming through and grazing it, a week later, it's going to spring back. You can see it on the side of the road sometimes if you have like a big patch of bufflegrass you drive by all the time, and finally it comes and gets mowed down and it's completely dead. It could happen this week, and next week it would resprout and it would just be lime green, bright, living plant. It has so much resources stored in its roots that it's just going to bounce back to life if you cut it down. So you have to remove it and get those roots out.
Are they deep, or is it a big taproot, or is it?
It's not. It's about 1 to 2 inches deep,
that's nice.
And then beneath that you'll have like spaghetti-looking roots, and those aren't going to grow back. It's just these little root nodules that are regrowth points, and if you leave those in the ground, it's just going to create a new plant. So it's incredibly impressive when you think about it ecologically. Like, wow, you're so tenacious. You can survive fire, you can survive mowing, and you keep coming back. So you're truly impressive. But I truly hate you also. Like, I want you out of the Sonoran Desert, but you got to dig it out. If you have a large stand of bufflegrass, that might not be feasible for you because it takes a lot of time and energy. And after a rain, that's the best time if you've got a patch of bufflegrass you've been eyeing in your backyard to manage, because the soils are a little bit wetter and you can pull it out. But if you try and remove bufflegrass right now, it's like trying to rip something out of concrete sometimes. So you have to use a pickaxe, and it's sweaty.
Oh yeah, like you say in the summer.
Very, very energy intense work.
Does it grow all year, or summer it's kind of prime season to spread and to be really strong?
It can grow any time of the year if you give it water.
Okay.
And it's not freezing out. So if you give it a 1/4 inch of rain any time of the year, it's going to start growing.
So let me ask you this, because I know there are a lot of people that deal with bufflegrass, and as people are having their fire insurance pulled because they have it around them, is there you were talking about spraying, so is there an easily accessible spray or chemical on the market for homeowners to use?
Yes, glyphosate products are the best, most effective product for managing bufflegrass, and it's also the most environmentally safe product. Unfortunately, a lot of our food that we eat has glyphosate sprayed all around it and on the crops. So there's a lot of hesitation around it because of what people hear in the agricultural department. But in terms of treating and defending your house, you're not planning on eating the plants around your yard unless you have a garden, you know.
Sure.
What about the wildlife? Is it safe for wildlife, especially the birds?
Yeah, the birds don't. I mean, so you're spraying it on a plant that isn't getting used by the birds, and it doesn't really get used by many of the insects either. That's one of the unfortunate side effects of invasive plants. A lot of people are like, well, aren't native animals going to use those plants? Like, we're in the desert, plants are good, right? It's like, no. all of our species on Earth evolved over millions of years using the things by them. And they want to use the insects that are native to the region. They want to eat the grasses that are native to the region. So you can bring in this grass and it just sits there and it doesn't get used. You don't see the grasshoppers eat all the grasses down.
Only the grass you want to grow.
It's the native plants that are getting consumed by our native creatures, and buffalo grass just isn't palatable. So one of the strategies for defending your house, if you want to do it yourself, you can use a weed whacker and chop it down and then follow that up with chemical treatment where you're just spraying the crown of a plant that's only an inch high instead of having to spray plants that are 3 feet high like we do when we're in the back country because we're not allowed to bring weed whackers back there.
Sure.
But if you're defending your house, you can come up with these strategies that I've used, or you can use the strategies that I've come up with for making it more manageable. If you cut it down with the weed whacker and then just spot spray it and follow up when you're seeing it green and growing, you can manage the area around your house.
Good to know.
Yeah, well, definitely. I'm sure that a lot of people will be able to use that information. So Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And you can only treat the plant when it's green and actively growing. If you're trying to apply chemical to it when it's dried out and tan, that's not going to do anything. You're just wasting your money and putting chemical into the environment that's not going to have any effect.
Good to know. Thank you. Well, we're going to take a quick break to hear a message from Skip.
Today's program is brought to you by SKIP, the Social Service Contractors Indemnity Pool. SKIP is a member-owned, member-directed insurance provider with more than 3 decades of insuring Arizona social service organizations for their property, general and professional liability, and auto claim exposures. With an Arizona-based staff of claim underwriting and risk management professionals, SKIP specializes in providing personalized service, affordable premiums, and coverage which meets and often exceeds the state of Arizona's contract requirements for social service providers. For more information, visit our website at www.sscip.org or ask your insurance agent about protecting your organization with insurance coverage through SKIP.
Welcome back. Thank you for listening to the things that Skip can do for you and that they have to say. We're back talking about things, on the ground, in the sky, birds, stars, and invasive buffalo grass. So I think we've learned a lot about buffalo grass, and I wanted to swap over. And thank you, Tony, for sharing all that information. That's great to know. And also Carlos, who's here. His nonprofit's just a few years old, like the buffalo grass invasive species plant program, but you're doing something completely different, aren't you?
Yes, we are.
So can you tell our listeners what Reach for the Stars is about? What's your mission?
Yes. So Reach for the Stars is the first and only nonprofit that stands at the crossroads between astronomy and mental health. So we use astronomy, STEAM, as in science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics, to help youth with their mental health, social emotional issues, bullying. Astronomy is used as a coping mechanism with us, and it's proven to do so. We're just the first ones to actually implement it. Astronomy is an extremely powerful tool, and so we capitalize on that and use it in various different ways. And it's a really great time, because who doesn't like going out underneath the stars and looking at Saturn's incredible rings, or Jupiter's cloud bands, or the Andromeda galaxy and the spiral arms coming out. It's a very inspiring, wondrous, and emotional way to connect to the universe, and that does something to the brain, and it's proven to do so.
And I would expect that, because we in our family have a large telescope and we love to look at the stars.
All right.
We have one with an 8-inch lens.
Nice.
And we used to set it up for the 5th graders at our local school when they were studying stars and when there was some interesting alignment going on. And it is a very emotional thing to view that. But, I've never really ever thought of how it would tie to mental health. So how did you find that out? How did you get that discovery?
Well, it was honestly by accident. You know, years ago, I was I was in a darker place and quite depressed, didn't have much motivation or knowledge of what I wanted to do with my life. And all of a sudden, we bought this little $40 Walmart telescope, and I set it up in the backyard. It was a birthday present for our son, and I was going to surprise him. But what actually happened was when I pointed it at the brightest star in the sky, it happened to be Jupiter. And that little piece of plastic with 2 lenses transferred me through time and space, and I could see the red and brown cloud bands. I could see the great red spot. I could see the 4 moons orbiting it. It was so incredibly powerful. It stopped me in my tracks, and I believe it was a few hours I was out there hunting for different things, trying to figure out what the heck was I looking at? How was this thing drifting across the lens? It felt alive. It felt inspirational. I was uplifted. I was distracted, and I wasn't having any anxiety or stress. And when I came back inside, my wife saw the smile on my face and saw how happy I was. And she said, whatever you're doing, you need to keep doing that. And so from that time on, we started researching, and we bought a real telescope and a big one, and started sharing it with people, and it took off from there.
That is so fun. Did your son ever get to play with that telescope?
Nope.
The first time?
I'm just kidding.
You probably went straight from that one to the big one, and that's in the closet somewhere.
I do not recommend a Walmart telescope, but if you ever have any questions or anything, we are the organization to come to for astronomy equipment.
That is fun. And I know you share your astronomy equipment with kids and with programming. And so maybe you can let our audience know what that's about.
Yes, we do. We have a few different programs and ways to share astronomy with the communities. We have a telescope rental program. You can rent telescopes, massive binoculars, advanced high-tech equipment. You can even come and borrow it for a few months if you'd like. And we give private events. We can do weddings, corporate events. We can come to your business and set up for the evening. There's so many things you can do with astronomy, day or night. We also have specialized solar telescopes with many different types of filters to safely look at the sun, and show prominences, sunspots, all types of interesting things. And we also do astrophotography, a lot of different incredible equipment from all over the world that's been donated to us. We had, like I said, we started with that one telescope, and then we got a real one. But we've quickly found that there was close to 100 people coming to our monthly stargazing event that we do for the public. And with only one telescope, we were like, this is going to be a problem. And so we put the word out there that we need telescopes. One more thing, we also donate telescopes to children. Every month we select a family and surprise them with a full astronomy package, complete with telescope, eyepieces, gifts and gadgets, books, everything that they need. And then we mentor them to train them how to use it.
That's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
And do you take nominations for those families, or are you looking for people who are maybe struggling with some mental health and kind of trying to tackle that in particular, or?
Absolutely. So if you know of someone or a child who's struggling, maybe with bullying, with problems at home, problems in school, having motivation, anxiety, stress, and depression, astronomy can have a huge impact on those areas. And I've seen it firsthand with myself, and I've seen it in our clients and a lot of the kids that we serve. There's been some amazing transformations just because of astronomy and STEM, and it's incredible to watch. And it's sad because it's it's an untapped area. Being the first to share something with the world, you want everyone to know this is right here. It's easy. You can do it from home. You don't even need a telescope to feel the impacts. Just using your eyes, naked eye observations, and there's objects up there that you can see, and and stories you can learn and create your own stories. Like I was talking with Tony earlier, the constellations are just stories from generations of people, and you can create your own constellations and whatever you see.
I know Tony did say he likes to do that, and that's a great thing. And then Mark, our producer, was saying, it's so dark here in Tucson. And so it really is the perfect place, our dark skies.
Oh my gosh, it is.
And wide skies. I moved here from Seattle, so when we would get our telescope out, we would set it up in the backyard, and we lived among 100-foot pine trees. Pine and cedar. And so what would happen would be, by the time Mars got into the sky, it'd be 11 o'clock at night, and it would be dead of winter. That's when it wasn't cloudy in Seattle. And our kids would be out there at 11 going, can we go to bed yet? We're like, no, Mars is almost going to show. It's going to come in, because our skyline was so minimal.
Right.
And so to be in a place where, as you're saying, it's just so dark and
wide open spaces.
it is. And we sit there too, and my husband and I sit out in the backyard and think, okay, that's blinking, so that's a satellite. And like you're saying, and airplanes go by, and the space station goes by, all those things. So that we forget are right above our heads.
Yeah, light pollution does play a role, but luckily here in Tucson we have the International Dark Sky Association fighting to protect our dark skies. Not only helps with humans, our health, but also wildlife. And but yes, we are in the astronomy capital of the world, and it is in my mind, the perfect place, time, and people are getting excited about space again. There's so much happening up there. The missions to the ISS, everything that SpaceX, Rocket Lab, Firefly, all these private and private rocket organizations and companies. There's so much happening in space, and we're headed back to the moon. That everyone's getting excited about space again, and this is the perfect time to launch this nonprofit and introduce the possibilities that are out there with mental health and the ways that astronomy can impact that.
What's the biggest hurdle your nonprofit faces?
Oh, for the last 3 years, we've been running the organization out of our home.
Mm-hmm. I was wondering about storage of all that equipment.
Yes. So we have equipment packed to the ceiling in our home, and it has not been easy. We have our youth camps where we do a week-long youth program and invite youth into the house, and we do all types of activities, and we need equipment for all that. We need art supplies, we need telescopes, we need chairs and tables, and having to do all that in our home has been extremely difficult. We are not confined by passion or ambition. We are confined by walls. And so we need a facility. And we've been working hard to design a facility that we can build to spread awareness and bring this incredible vision into reality, into the Tucson communities.
It's interesting. There's so many vacant buildings in Tucson right now. And in the past, probably 5 or 6 years, I know there are a lot of nonprofits in Tucson who have found vacant buildings and had these people donate them to them.
Yeah.
So you might, instead of starting at the very scratch, find a building that's been vacant for a long time, and the owner is like, great, I'll just donate it to you and write it off or sell it at a bargain.
That's true.
So
there's
a great option.
That is a possibility, and that would be incredible.
At least a stepping stone to the grand vision.
Yeah, exactly. And there has been, organizations that have helped us along the way. The YMCA, for example, we had a classroom space there, but it's very, very difficult to bring all that equipment that you need for a full camp, or even just one class where we do 6 different STEM activities, building solar-powered cars and rockets and telescopes and art. There's so many things to haul back and forth and organize and keep maintained and safe and protected to do justice to the people who donated these things to us. So it's not easy, and we need our own space to to stay.
It must be a full-time job for you and your wife. Is this what
Absolutely.
your full-time job is?
Yes.
Managing this nonprofit?
Yes.
Don't you think it sounds like that, Tony?
Yes. I
I
think
can't imagine.
we're equally busy.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm sure. It's that's kind of a fun thing. So, who do you look for guidance and support when you're struggling and trying to keep moving forward?
That would be my wife. She is a beacon of hope and light in my life. I also look to my faith, and lastly, the stars. The stars still help me cope almost daily with my anxiety, and that combination of those three, it's the perfect trio for me. So my wife she's incredibly smart. She runs so much of the organization and supports it and myself in so many ways, and I couldn't do it without her.
That's a good story. That's a neat way to start a nonprofit from scratch.
Yeah.
Just have it birthed naturally like it was for you in the backyard, and then to get the whole family involved.
Yeah, it's
Kids
really
too, I'm sure.
yeah, it's amazing.
And Tony, you were commenting earlier about enjoying being outdoors, and before we started the show talking about being a federal employee and being able to get out to work outside. I think both of you, what a nice way to have your job. It's like us at Impact. We're so passionate about what we do, and I always feel so fortunate to work in something that brings me passion. And I know listening to you, Tony, talking about working outside and working at the Grand Canyon under the stars.
Yeah, I think just working in nature and looking at the stars, that one of my favorite things in life is being in awe. And that's something through traveling and hiking and recreating, of looking at a landscape or a plant or an animal or the sky and just being in awe of, wow.
It's
This
funny
is
you
so
mentioned that.
awesome. And as you're talking about seeing the stars, it's like I've had those same moments, and I always talk about the benefit of being outdoors, and many people have talked about mental health benefits of being outdoors and smelling fresh air. But I think that a lot of it is just that inspiration of being in awe of, wow, this is so big, this is so powerful. I'm seeing this. It might be free, like most things in nature. You just have to look. You have to take the time, slow down. Like, we're just so hurried with everything we do that when you go and you stop and you look at the stars or you look at a flower, you're breathing, you're being a human, you're just enjoying the world around you. And it's so cool. And that's good for your mental health, relieves stress, and just makes you happy. And then you want to share it with somebody. So
Sure.
Then you're socializing. It's like, hey, I saw this thing. It was amazing. Come check it out.
That's exactly correct. The awe effect is a scientifically proven way to decrease stress, anxiety, and depression. And astronomy brings that. There's many things here on Earth that people do to help with their mental health, like music, for example, nature. But when you look through a telescope of something that's not of this world, that's outside of our daily perspective, it brings that awe effect in almost every time. And that is a very, very powerful tool. It's something that Reach for the Stars wants to share with the world and get people involved with. And like you said, start the conversation, get people meeting new people and just excited about what's up above our heads every night while we sleep. It's out there. You just have to go look.
Yeah, and for all the people that complain, how hot it is in Tucson, well, go out at night. The sun is down.
Hey.
It's nice. You can enjoy. You can recreate. So yeah, get out there. Look at the stars.
Yeah. And if you ever need any optics or binoculars to spot invasive species or birds or anything of the above, let us know.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
That is one of the fun things about this show. Not only are we able to bring the things that you do, you superheroes do in the community to the broader community, but it's always fun to see the guests connect and often work together afterwards. So it's a giant community of resources and a lot of people doing similar things. So it's great to bring people together.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I'm glad you're both here. Tony, what is it? I know Audubon's got some birds too. So do you have suggestions for what people can do in their backyard to bring birds to their yard?
Yes.
I mean, I know there are a million hummingbirds and different breeds of hummingbirds and butterflies, and we have so many natural on the path for so many migration of species.
So I'm an absolute plant geek, and that's one of the reasons why I do invasive plant work is because of my profound love for all of the vegetation of the Sonoran Desert. I've created a botanical garden at my house, and I have over 180 species of plants that are regionally native that
Wow.
come up either annually or that are established perennial plants. And I have had so many birds and butterflies come to our house as the result. When we bought our house 10 years ago, it was just bare soils. It's a neighborhood from the 70s, and slowly started planting seeds, putting in native plants. And the key is where you purchase your plants from. You need to go to some of our good local nurseries. Spadefoot Nursery, Desert Survivors, Arizona Growers, or nurseries that grow their plants here native, and they're just fantastic places. One of the things that I experience that I hear from people is, oh, I just don't have a green thumb. I can't do it. And it's something that I'm a deep thinker, and I've thought of this cultural issue that we have of being this melting pot society that's moved from Europe to the East Coast, now Midwest, and then into the West. And it's like, well, mom had this plant, grandma had this plant, and I want to grow that here.
Right.
Well, you don't live where grandma lived. You live in the desert. Look around you, find out what grows here, become part of the region, find out the culture of the region. What I kind of came up with in my thoughts is that ultimately plants are culture. All of your cultures come from your homeland. And what were all of your ancestors eating, building with, wrapping themselves with? It was the native vegetation. Now we're a bunch of people that live in a land, and we haven't taken the time to learn our native species here in the Sonoran Desert. It's like, well, I want to grow this thing from the East Coast, and I put it in the ground and I give it all this water and it can't survive. So then you blame yourself for it.
Sure.
And it's like, no, if you just started using some of the native plants, you'd have a lot better results. And since I've started doing that, it's incredible, the transformation and how quickly it occurs. One of the other really depressing parts and the challenges that I will give to every listener here, go to one of the big box stores. They have plants that are flowering 365 days of the year. Try and find a butterfly. Try and find a native insect that isn't a European honeybee. They've been covered in insecticides. They were grown in huge farms, doused in insecticides, so that they would be able to make it through their nursery life. Then they were moved from California or some nice place and brought here to the desert. But they still have the insecticides in them.
Sure, systemically.
And it's not getting used. And you can plant it in the ground, and it still has the insecticides in it. So if you want a depressing practical activity, go to a big box store.
There you go. Check out the local nurseries and get some local plants.
If you plant the native stuff, bring in native seeds, start in areas where water runs off of your house, where the gutter comes out, your drip line from your AC condenser. Scatter seeds there. They're native. If they have just the slightest boost of moisture, they're going to do well. and it's going to get your neighbors talking, and eventually they'll start stopping by. And I've created a space in my front yard where I'm out there all the time, and it's like, what's up with this guy that's always out in his front yard? And it's a sad reflection of society that people have all of this space in their front yard. They don't use it for anything, or they think that I'll put in gravel and it'll just be a sterile, dead yard. So we have some of our big monsoon storms or spring blooms, and I have this carpet of wildflowers in my front yard, and my neighbors just have dead rocks.
Sure.
And it's like, that is the pinnacle of society and what a beautiful yard is. And it just boggles my mind. Like, I'm not using that space. Now I have hundreds of other animals that are using it. I've documented over 35 butterflies and moths in my yard in a single season. And those are just the ones that I could identify.
Sure.
So if you build it, they will come.
Well, that's a fun thing to think about, because I know we are on a butterfly migration. My husband and I have a lot of butterflies in our backyard, different kinds of butterflies, and a lot of them all the time. So it is an interesting thing. I don't know if we're perched upon a hill, so maybe that has something to do with it as well. But it is fun to do that. And we took a xeriscape class when we got here, because when you come from Seattle, where everything, like you're saying, is always doused in rain, and you move to a place that's dry. So that's good to know. So check out those local nurseries, local growers, and Native Seed Search.
Yeah, and the Tucson Audubon also does offer services. Like, if you don't want to do it yourself and you want to hire us, we have a Habitat at Home program where we'll plant the plants in your yard.
Oh, gosh.
We'll do the landscaping. We'll do the rock work, water harvesting features. So
that's good.
We do that work also. We don't just kill the plants. We want to bring in the good stuff also. So it's a whole system approach.
Nice. Well, let me ask both of you two questions. One, from a funding standpoint, are the Audubon Society, Tucson Audubon, and Reach for the Stars, I'm sure you're always looking for donations, and maybe are either of you tax credit qualified?
Yes and yes.
Both of you, that's wonderful.
Yes, correct.
Because, tax credits just went up this year, and they're now $421, which I think is such a funny number to jump from $400 to $421.
It really is.
And then when you double it, it's not $842, it's still $841. It's very confusing this year. But I think that these are great opportunities. If these are your passions, stars and your backyard and the health of your local natural nature community, then these are great places to invest your money. And then also, what about time? I'm sure, what about Reach for the Stars? How can people get involved on a volunteering level?
Oh, so many ways. So we not only...
Sounds like a relief for you and your family.
Yes. We not only need telescope operators, educators, science teachers, but people in the mental health fields, counselors. We have monthly stargazing events. We have solar events. We do STEM camps. We go out in the town and do private events. There's so many things that we do, and if you know how to do bookkeeping, anything that is under the realm of the nonprofit, we need help with. So if you're interested, please reach out to us.
We'll do that, and the information is on the episode show page, so people can reach out to you. That has all the contact and social media, websites, things like that.
Yeah, even if you have a dusty telescope in your closet that you don't foresee yourself using, swing it by. We'd love to use it and put it towards a family in need and change someone's life. So
that would be fun. I know we haven't had ours out in a long time, so that was in the back of my head too. What about, Tony? I know there are a lot of groups who kind of gather volunteers to tackle buffalo grass, and you were saying you have a crew of full-time employees. Do you also use volunteers on the buffalo grass eradication?
We do have some volunteer events that we participate in. During February, it's Save Our Saguaros Month. It's the Desert Museum and a lot of our partners, like Saguaro National Park, will do buffalo grass removal events. And COVID had a negative impact on a lot of our volunteer activities because we do travel far-flung places, and now that's something we're starting back up again, is doing some volunteer removals. Those are more often in the winter time because it is incredibly hot. So if you want to donate to us, if you don't want to get out there and be sweating buckets and busting up your hands and knees, we would gladly do that for you. But it is very expensive, and like I said, it's 20 full-time employees. That's with benefits and all of the good things that we need to support a crew that's working out in the elements. But beyond the volunteer projects that occur, we've also have another invasive species called stinknet that is a winter annual, and we've really been leading the way in trying to combat the spread of this species throughout Tucson. It's really consumed Phoenix and most of Maricopa County. It is a stinky plant, if you could guess by the name. It also has fire issues related to it. It is able to spread and outcompete all of our native winter annuals. So those beautiful fields of poppies, little yellow mustard flowers, lupins, those will get wiped out by stinknet. And it's already happening in Phoenix. You can Google it and look at some of the pictures in Phoenix. It's a nightmare. It looks like a slime mold from a helicopter. Like if you're looking at a helicopter at some of their desert spaces, it was just so consumed with the plant from this wet winter spring that we had that it was everywhere. And we created a website called stinknet.org.
Oh, funny.
That's a mapping tool that the public's allowed to use. If you're walking your dog and you see this plant, it's a very unique looking plant. It's a yellow sphere, almost about the size of a marble is what the flower looks like. And it doesn't have any petals on it. So if you see something that has yellow petals on it, not stinknet.
Okay.
If you see a sphere that's about marble shape or a green pea, that sort of size class, that's just a pure sphere, that is most likely stinknet. And it grows from about December through March, and then it's setting its seed from April through May and June. So our goal with creating the stinknet.org is the public can get involved. It's going to take an army. It's going to take the whole community getting out there and spotting it. We can't be everywhere. So if people see it, they're able to take a picture, make a GPS pinpoint by just filling out the real brief log on our website, and then it records that point.
Okay, well, that would be good.
You can either say, hey, I manually removed it, or there was way too much here. We're going to need help. So that's one of the things that donations really helps us with, because it's not something that's being funded at a large scale, but we are able to go and show up at Swan and Broadway. And it's like, hey, there was an infestation in this spot. It's flowering right now. So I can send my crews there. We'll manually remove it, throw it in bags, and get it away. And by doing that, we're going to stop the spread of it. In Phoenix, they were spreading it. They were giving it to people. They were really happy about it. They were selling it at farmers markets.
Oh my gosh.
This stuff is not good for you. It is bad for your health.
Didn't know it was so bad.
People were actively spreading it. And now, like if you look at some of the media reports from this winter, it's in the planter boxes at the Capitol building. And it wasn't planted there. It spread there.
Sure.
Like that's how overrun Phoenix is with this stuff.
Well, and because it's yellow and it's spherical and it's pretty, people think, oh, that looks nice. It's better than just gravel, right?
Unfortunately,
Pretty,
it's
but
incredibly allergenic.
Okay.
Causes headaches, causes irritability. The oils, like if you're manually removing it for multiple hours and your skin is sensitive, people have developed blisters from it. So contact dermatitis from the oils within the leaves have given people blisters.
Oh my gosh.
So it is an incredibly nasty plant, and we're trying our best to prevent it from spreading throughout the city, but it takes a city to fight this battle. So if anybody out there is willing to take up the cause, stinknet.org, and you can go map it, remove it, and keep our place happy.
I haven't even noticed it, but I'm sure if I get onto the website and see a picture of it, now I'm going to be aware of it everywhere. Once you are aware of something.
Yeah, I got to look it up too.
Yeah, so we'll do that, and that's a great way for the community to pitch in, and that's easy if it's just right in your backyard and you just haven't realized it yet.
A little bit easier to remove than a big buffalo grass also. You can just pluck this out with your fingers instead of needing to use a pickaxe.
Perfect. That sounds perfect. So I was thinking, is there anything else before we wrap up that either of you would like to add that you didn't get a chance to talk about? How about you, Carlos? Anything you want people to know about your organization that we haven't covered? You just had your gala.
Yeah.
So do you have any other fundraisers coming up, or a need for volunteers for a certain event?
Well, we have a monthly public stargazing event every month.
Okay, where is that? Is it mobile or?
It is at Gabe Zimmerman Trailhead, usually. Typically the second or third Saturday of each month. You can see it on our website at rftstars.com. But one thing I wanted to really talk on briefly is the connection between mental health and astronomy, and how we can use it to help our youth in the community. Youth are the future. We need to protect them and mentor them and guide them in the right directions, because they're going to be our leaders someday. Mm-hmm. And right before COVID started, we had quite a few youth suicides in the community. And that was when we got that telescope. We didn't realize it at the time, but this need to help these kids arose, and the telescope was introduced into our lives. And the way that people get help is typically therapists, counseling, talking with family, maybe medication. Sometimes that's not enough, and obviously it wasn't enough for the kids who harmed themselves. And so we want to introduce telescopes into everyone's lives if we can. We want to put a telescope into every house in Tucson, or give people the access to come to stargazing events to get rid of those negative thoughts and cope. And so, only one counselor per every 600 youth are available. And so having telescopes in people's lives can really change and impact the way kids grow up, kids get inspired, and they're going to be our leaders, and we have to guide them into the right direction and launch them on their own trajectories towards happiness and success. So if anyone wants to get involved in any way, please reach out.
That is a great thing, and I think we're going to have a lot of people looking differently at the ground they're walking on and looking up into the stars. And I loved the comments you both made about it's the awe of nature that is so inspiring.
Absolutely.
And so thank you for inspiring our audience today. Hopefully they will learn more about each of these organizations and get out into nature, and a little vitamin D and a little bit of awe, and that's good for everybody's mental health, I think.
Stay curious.
Exactly. Great advice. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.